This is Kathy Roosevelt Jonas, licensed clinical social worker from Epic Healing Eugene and Radiant Heart Consulting. Epic Healing Eugene is the first licensed service center in Oregon and also in the nation, serving people who come to us with psilocybin as our modality that we do facilitated journeys. This is a legalized framework, so it's different than the underground. Today I wanted to talk about some things that often aren't talked about when you're doing a psychedelic journey for healing. And so some of the topics I'm going to cover today is a concept that I name incomplete purging. So we are going to be talking about bucket use and how that actually is something that can happen during a therapeutic psychedelic journey. And so I wanted to talk about that. I also wanted to talk about trauma and transformation and a phenomenon that I see that's repeated in different clients that I work with is some different levels of resistance and some strategies of overcoming holding on to that psychedelic shore and just not being able to fully let go. So here we go. So the first concept that I wanted to talk about is purging. Yes, many of us that are aware of using ayahuasca as a healing medicine. That's ayahuasca is a combination of a plant and a vine, often from the Amazon, and they're mixed together and it creates a psychedelic brew called ayahuasca. Different ways of preparing that can stimulate different levels of detoxing, or otherwise called purging. And it's not only related to a feeling of nausea. That feeling of nausea isn't necessarily related to the medicine itself. It's what's related to what's coming up emotionally. That Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps a Score, and just that title alone is a beautiful representation of what goes on when trauma affects us in our life. And these can be adverse life experiences. There's many levels of traumas. There's the big traumas, the big T's, and the little T's that can be accumulated over time. So what happens with normally in our life is, I like to describe kind of introduction to purging to get an idea of a concept about it, is that we do a lot of things in our life to keep this still pond or still pool of our lives predictable. And that doesn't mean that there's not sediment on the bottom of our life experiences. Those are good experiences too, but often it's the adverse childhood experiences or things that we've overcome, hard breakup, different things, and we kind of have kept things a way of being steady in our lives. Maybe we avoid talking to certain people, or we make our lives very predictable. And we might be resistant to having a lot of change in our lives because we want to keep things the way that we can manage them. So with this analogy or this metaphor is that life events certainly happen, and they're like the turbulence of life. There's like going to be some wind that's going to kick up some currents and uneven territory in our lives just from living. Like say that there's a reckless driver that we feel like we have to swerve, and we now that's something from the external environment that kind of disrupts things. So, fast forward now to a psychedelic experience. Some people start feeling kind of a disruption, like things are starting to get stirred up in the sediment before you even consume psychedelics. It is this is part of the mystery of how things work with psychedelics, is that there might be synchronicity that starts happening in your life, more dreams, remembering people and places maybe that you haven't remembered for a really long time. That means that things are starting to get a little stirred up there, that sediment on the still pond of our lives. Now, with psychedelics, what they found in research, they've termed this calming of the default mode network. Is there's a part of our brain that is our conditioned sense of self. It's again that part of us that keeps our pond steady. You know, we do things in a certain way. If we have OCD, we might do certain rituals. We things to keep things status quo so we can predict life. Not too much change. Little change is okay, but not too much change for a lot of people that want to kind of have life more predictable. Yes, we actually have a very complicated relationship with change. Most people do. Most people say they want to change, they want to do something different, they want their life to be different, but that means that there has to be some disruption, some openness, kind of letting something go to let in new stuff. So all that is related to what's happening with this conditioned part of our brain called the default mode network. So what they found in psychedelic research is that when people are on psilocybin, for instance, is that there is more communication happening in different parts of the brain that normally don't communicate with one another. And there is this calming of this default mode network, this conditioned part of self that will calm. So it's not being so restless. It's not keeping us in a rut of doing the same thing, thinking the same way. This way of calming that default mode network and then have different parts of our brain talking to one another is how insight is generated. And that's a very important aspect of psychedelic healing, is this ability to think outside the box, even for a short while, and to see things in a different way that we haven't seen or we weren't aware of. Is to just say even our past experiences that were difficult in our life, we might get a perspective of the background story of what was happening with our parents and their parents. This has to do with intergenerational healing, which is very much a part of psychedelic healing for many people. So back to this concept then of purging. So we have this still pool of our lives in, you know, even though it's disruptive, it has a way of just being kind of calm to our degree that we've been able to make it calm, but we do have this sediment. So some people that I'll segue just a little bit and talk about the difference between microdosing and macrodosing. So what we do at Epic Healing Eugene and Radiant Heart Consulting is we do macro dosing. So those are anything from 9 milligrams, the way we do it, up to 50 milligrams. In research settings, kind of the sweet spot in a lot of the research and clinical settings is 25 milligrams. And that's the psychoactive component within the psilocybin. So there's a measurement called psilocybin analate that they're looking at, that amount of psilocybin that's actually in the mushrooms that you consume. So it doesn't it doesn't calculate to grams. It has to do with potency that's in the psychedelic mushrooms. So that can really vary on how much you take, depending on the type of mushrooms that you take. So just telling you a little bit about that. So microdosing should be more of a sub-therapeutic, sometimes 1/20th or up to 1/10, but usually it's even like 1/20th of a dose of mushrooms. So it shouldn't be something that is having a psychoactive effect. You shouldn't be seeing things get brighter, but there is more of a mind clarity that might happen, a little boost of energy. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because this is kind of below sub-therapeutic in comparison to coming in for a big macrodose experience. It can stir up the sediment that we were just talking about of that still pond. It can stir it up just enough that can feel unsettled, and that's usually a sign that you're taking too much of the microdosing, or else it could be that you're ready for a bigger experience of healing with psilocybin or whatever plant medicine that you're working with. So now let's fast forward to actually being in the psychedelic experience, and of a concept that I'd like to introduce called incomplete purging. First, let's define what is purging. So purging, just like kind of the intro of this video is talking about a comparison with ayahuasca, is during the ayahuasca experiences, there can be a lot of vomiting. Purging, it can also be stomach upset, feeling like you need to go to the bathroom. It can be a lot of groaning, all those kinds of things. So psilocybin typically isn't as intense in that process, but it can be. And the usual aspects of purging, now this is getting that sediment has stirred up. So let's just understand what's going on here. So for people that are getting afraid about this whole concept, and also like, oh no, I would never want to do that. I actually felt the same way. As the reason why I never wanted to do ayahuasca is I did not want to purge. I didn't want to be like vomiting and all those kinds of things. But that was before I understood that this is an opportunity for deep emotional release. It's like the angst of that settlement, that sediment, is that you have this building up within your system, and can really manifest for a lot of people in this chronic feeling of anxiety, like restlessness. It can be that something's not quite right, that you don't feel comfortable in your own skin. Now, this is a reason why a lot of people end up and get onto antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications, is that they're trying to calm that feeling. They're trying to calm feeling unsettled. So what I'm introducing here is that this is actually when a person's ready in their own time, that there is an opportunity to release those feelings through the body. Because the body remembers, just like Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps a Score, just that title, is that trauma kind of lodges in the body in different ways. So I'm just going to take a little segue and talk about the vagus nerve for a second. So the vagus nerve is the longest nerve in the body. It goes from the brainstem all down the colon, up through all the organs, and it goes into the inner ear. And this inner ear awareness that we can become like very sensitive to voice tone, inflections. It's kind of this internal antenna of how we're sensing safety in what's going on in our lives. And this vagus nerve, which is really interesting in understanding trauma, it comes online about at age 3. Now, what's interesting about this to think about is that the vagus nerve, if it comes on around age 3, we have this concept of called the terrible twos. Well, that's like in between 2 going up into 3. That's when a child's starting to assert more independence, feeling more frustration about different things, not having as much as they're developing a frustration tolerance. So depending on how they're parented, how we were parented, you got to think about that as it relates to adult trauma healing and being in a position of taking psychedelic for whatever reason that we're doing it is usually for healing, is that we have been left with some woundedness in however it was that we were parented through the critical stages of the vagus nerve developing and coming online. This is when we have like our first sensation of hurt feelings. Our chest hurts, our throat hurts. We're very sensitive. So if a parent can help a child navigate it is with these feelings and being sensitive to their environment, yeah, those are big feelings that you're having, or however you're going to work with your child, instead of what happens with a lot of children who are now adults who are dealing with adult trauma that for this healing is in that developmental stage, which can be coupled with physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, neglect. It can be coupled with a whole bunch of things, but just in that critical phase is that children might learn that their feelings don't matter, that they need to stifle their tears. Tears aren't safe to express. They could get in trouble for that. There can be shame associated with expressing how they feel because they might feel responsible that they hurt somebody else's feelings. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. Layers and layers and layers of this development as we come online as being a fully human being that has all these feelings. And so we have to kind of learn how to operate our own machinery, our own internal vagus nerve. And this vagus nerve, just so you know, can be healed. It's called through, there's some strategies of how to tone the vagus nerve. Some of that has to do with voice, like toning, making sounds. There's different ways of vibrating through the breath, through heart rate variability training, through regulated breathing, through making the exhale longer than the inhale. And also very important is to allow there to be awareness that the body is feeling tension in different areas. So instead of looking for the escape route of numbing out the body, the feelings, is that there can be a growing and growing tolerance to feel subtle levels of discomfort. And this discomfort is part of what really needs to be navigated in order to come to the other side. So a phrase that is I like to use for psychedelic healing is a concept of in and through. You have to go into the feelings in order to come out, into the physical feelings, into the emotional feelings, in order for it to do its arc of feeling, of release, now of crying. Now, this is a form of purging and letting go, moving on to the other side. So, in the psychedelics experience, like we've talked about that in before you're starting to have your psychedelic experience, there might be some feelings that start coming up, some memories, some thoughts, some dreams. Maybe you do start to feel more teary. This means things are being stirred up. It's okay. Things are just being stirred up. So I'll take a pause right there just to give some tools right now. It's like, well, what do you do if you are starting to feel that things are being stirred up and they're uncomfortable for you? So something of a critical life skill in healing is positive self-talk. It's different than just an affirmation. An affirmation can be that you're really trying to overcome a self-esteem issue and you're trying to give yourself positive words about that. I'm an efficient speaker. I'm a kind and compassionate person. Different things like whatever your affirmations are. Now, this has to do, positive self-talk is now getting to what are those words that we need to hear that make us feel better. It might be something that we wish that somebody else would have told us growing up. That's often the source of why it's hard to have this positive self-talk, especially coming from a history of trauma. Is some of the positive self-talk is so simple if it can be applied. And one of those is, I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. It's going to be okay. Just letting that in. And yes, to some degree, you have to fake it till you make it. It is a choice to decide to point yourself in the direction of feeling better. But this is the self-soothing that is really important for getting ready to navigate a psychedelic experience, and also in this whole readiness of it, that you can be okay with the sediment of the still pond being stirred up. I'm okay. So now let's get into, there's different ways of giving yourself positive, soothing messages. I trust, I open, I relax, I'm relaxing, I'm trusting that this I trust is just this real openness that you are receiving. I'm ready to receive. I'm opening. I'm letting go. I'm letting go of what doesn't serve me. And you keep the breath going. You use the breath as a tool. One tool I like to, just a strategy that I often will teach clients is to go ahead and breathe in kind of the good feelings and just to let that go. I'm going to let that go. I'm going to let that go. And do an arm movement too. I'm going to let that go. And let it go. Now you're starting to come and get yourself more ready to come into a psychedelic experience for healing. So now again, these are higher dosages. These are microdoses. that we work with, that in our setting, we offer extra preparation. You get 3 hours of individual preparation with your chosen facilitator. You get unlimited access to all of our free personal growth groups. We have 4 personal growth groups a month, including a trauma and transformation group. We have ongoing integration groups bi-monthly. So we're offering, as well as a community education free group. We offer 9 groups a month for free just as our community of support. So as you're starting to get into being ready for your psychedelic experience, and you've been practicing this breathing and letting go, you've been giving yourself positive self-talk, you've worked with your facilitator in preparation, and now you're ready. You're ready to come in for your psychedelic experience. At Epic, Radiant Heart, ours are anywhere from, depending on dosage, 5 hours to 8 hours. Person isn't ever, hurried out. It's that we're there for as long as a person needs us to support them in their journey and to help them start to integrate. So you come on your day of your session, and you've been practicing your tools, and then you consume the psilocybin. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I want to talk about medications for a second, because this is something that comes up often. Should I get off my medications to take psilocybin? Please don't. Please don't stop your medications. Please consult with your mental health provider. There is some research about antidepressants such as SSRIs and SSNIs, is that there is about 50% of people that are on antidepressants have what is called a blunting effect of when they take psilocybin. That means that the psilocybin doesn't take hold as well as somebody that isn't on antidepressants, and I kind of term that as a nice, clean, spongy brain just ready to receive all that psilocybin, because the psilocybin actually has some serotonin in it. So it has a chemical makeup that's similar to serotonin, and with the antidepressants that are giving serotonin already, that means that those receptor sites, those ports, are already being taken up by the antidepressant that has the serotonin. So that means when psilocybin comes around, it's kind of like competing for that space. So about 50% of people have like a dulling or effect about it. But that means 50% do not. That means 50% of people that are on antidepressants are still going to be able to take psilocybin. So some of the ways that we handle this is we really try to get to know a person, and we look for a good assessment of what a person is on. We're not giving medical advice, but we can give some recommendations of where to seek information, and also consultation about certain medication, lists and profiles. The reason why we don't recommend that people get off their antidepressants just for the psilocybin experience is it can be really destabilizing. Okay, so that's again, that sediment on the still pond now is really stirred up. And so you kind of have to know how to navigate that. So if you're working with a therapist, if you're working with your provider, and they can help you figure out how to lower your dose perhaps, or transition onto a different medication, or maybe off, that is better done with somebody of a professional, your provider that you're working with, because it can be very disruptive to a person in their journey. And the other way that we work with it is we just give a higher dose. We do something called booster dosing. So that means that you maybe start out with that starter dose that a lot of those clinical and research settings are doing at 25 milligrams. And at 45 minutes, we check in and see if you have indeed had a doling effect, a blunted effect from those, from your medications. A surprising amount of people don't have a blunting effect, like 50%. So maybe you're not going to have it, yet that's going to be enough, and that effect is going to be plenty for you to navigate. But if you did have a at 45 minutes that you're just like, boy, I'm feeling a little something, but I'm not, or else then you can take a booster dose, which is something that's discussed ahead of time, planned for, and all those kinds of things. But like I said, not everybody needs it. So now we're at the psilocybin experience, and we actually have the psilocybin experience coming on. So I like to describe the psilocybin experience as climbing a mountain. So it takes about, 2 hours to get up to the top of the mountain, and you're going to probably be on the top of the mountain for about 45 minutes, and then it's going to kind of come down in waves for most people. We do a process called lemon teching, of adding lemon juice to the ground psilocybin product and let it sit there, which converts it from psilocybin to psilocin, the psychoactive component that gets you high. That's happening actually outside your body. So by the time you consume it, it's already pretty much, it's kind of been the lemon juice acted as your stomach digestive enzymes and did all this work, most of the work outside your body. So when you consume it, if you are going to be receptive to it, you could start feeling the effects in 15, 20 minutes. Shifts in the environment, shifts in yourself. Maybe the plants are becoming a little more colorful. We have lots of plants in an outdoor area at Epic, so it's people really tune into the nature of it. So now the effect starts coming in, and a person's going to feel generally sometimes tingly. Some people get the giggles or the smiles. I often like to describe psilocybin as it will love you up first. It does. It's like it's generally very friendly in different ways. So it's kind of like, oh, I don't need to be afraid of you, and I can relax into you more. But this does take some of that positive self-talk that we were talking about. If you're practicing already some of that, I'm going to be okay, and using your breath to, for some releasing breaths, letting things go of times that you're feeling unsettled or uncomfortable, is that when the effects of the psilocybin are coming on, you're just giving yourself nice, positive self-talk. I'm okay. I'm all right. I'm going to just let this in. And that's really important, because the more that you're able to relax That means that you're going to be able to let go of the psychedelic shore. For those people that like to be in control, this is another form of resistance. So resistance can happen through the medication process that we just talked about, and some strategies that we have to work around that. Another very powerful resistance factor is people's own fear and anxiety and wanting to be in control and not relaxing into the psilocybin experience. So this is where that positive self-talk comes in handy. And eventually, if you have enough, this is very important on dosage now, is the psilocybin effect as it starts to come on is going to calm that default network, the default mode network that we talked about, is going to get those different parts of your brain talking to each other. So now you got this calming that the psilocybin is helping with, and it's activating this real deep inner knowing of yourself. Okay, so you have now a psychedelic experience coming on. Your facilitator, often people wonder, what's the facilitator doing? Your facilitator is generally taking good notes for you. These are notes that are given to you. I never keep a copy of the notes. These are very private. And these are when certain things happen. If there was like gestures, arm movements of letting light in, maybe I'll make a note of the song that was playing at that time, the music, so a person can find that music afterwards, anything that they say, and the notes that are kept can be then compared to the journal entries of, because I'm keeping track of time as well, and together can piece together the whole story or parts of it, because nobody's going to remember everything. It's kind of like depending on dosage. This is dosage dependent. You're going to remember more from a lower dose. You're going to remember less because so much is happening on a higher dose. Not that you won't remember the important stuff, or that you'll remember things later that maybe reminds you, oh yeah, that happened in my psychedelic experience. But so you want to find a way of just letting go of the psychedelic shore and just letting yourself be with the experience of the psilocybin, because it's going to be showing you things, teaching you things. One thing that it will do is after you this is usually 45 minutes, hour in, hour and a half in, this is when you could start feeling some uncomfortable physical sensations within your body as you stumble on. This is going to be like you're going to have just like thoughts are going to move into another thought, and maybe you're going to have some visual images of fractals responding with the music and different in your thoughts. It's very unique to every person. Not everybody has visuals. Some people just really feel deeply, and that's what their feeling is, or else different aspects of the room will become teachers, like the plants in the room and the way that light strikes a leaf or something like that gives an insight. But eventually, depending on dosage, and if you let yourself go, you're gonna probably stumble. Many people do on some of these concepts of purging, either a lot of crying, emoting. Emoting can happen in different ways. It can be sounds. It could be like physical tension within the body. It could be some jolts of lightning, not lightning, but it kind of feels like that. Kind of like this, these bolts of electricity. It can be kind of like feeling you got to spit. You actually might actually have a like a different levels of vomiting coming on. So this is a bucket. These are, so just so you know, it's just a regular traditional garden bucket. This is my favorite to use. And when you're working with the purging concept, a sound sometimes is enough to let go of that angst. Now, remember that we're talking about the angst in the body, and you're just gonna, you're gonna make a sound. You're going to, if it's spitting, just anything like that is going to help you release kind of like the tension of it. It's kind of like a tire that's so inflated that you've got to let a little air out of it. It's kind of like that. It just like kind of builds up, and people can feel really uncomfortable about it, or else they start getting in their head, I don't want to get sick, I don't want to get sick. You don't have to get sick. Make a sound, make a gesture, like letting that go. You're just letting it go. This will help you shift. Otherwise, what happens if a person resists, holds on to the shore, gets kind of all in their head about not wanting to get sick, getting worried about what their body's doing, and not letting it just shake out or do what it needs to do. Could be a good cry, could be sobbing, it could be a variety of things that happen, copious amounts of snot. I mean, it's like the body wants to purge. You know, some women actually start their period much earlier than normal. This was can be a form of purging. It can be a variety of things that happen, but the body wants to let go of something. Help it let go. You don't have to force it, but if you make a sound, it can kind of just release it enough. Now, if you don't, and this happens too, this is where this concept of incomplete purging becomes relevant. I've worked with, I'm not sure, over 150 people since we opened, and this is the legalized psychedelic journeys in a licensed service center. So we have lots of rules and all those kinds of things, high safety profile, all those things too. Is a lot of people will purge in their different ways. Some people won't. Some people need to get home into their own environment or to their hotel, and then they'll report is that, oh yeah, I had this wave of nausea and I did some spitting and I felt better or whatever. But some people just aren't ready to let that go, or they're afraid of kind of, they start to open and start to let that go. You know, number one, is the facility going to be able to hold space for that? I mean, if you have a lot of trauma, it is something that I know for me, I have a lot of trauma, so I have to be, you know, I usually do my journeys by myself because I know I can hold space for myself, but that is something I try to reassure people that I'm working with, that I have a very, very high capacity of holding space for people with deep trauma. Because I hold space for my own trauma, but this is something that people need to feel safe. You need to feel that somebody is going to be able to hold your emotions, and you don't have to take care of the other person. So that could be a reason why you don't purge, because you don't feel like you have the container of safety to do it. The other thing is people might just be afraid. It's an uncomfortable this is getting real. It's emotions are getting more raw, more real. It's like this is what many people have uh, turned to medications because they don't want to feel it. Well, just giving some reassurance about that is that the way that psilocybin works is it's helping you. It's helping you not, you're not alone in being with these deep feelings. It's helping calm that default mode network. It's helping you have insight, and it's has a, for most people, describe a very nurturing presence in some way. Familiar. Uh, there's something about it that they're going through this, but they're not going through it alone. Just like the facilitators there to help in different ways. I don't like to help prematurely because I feel it's really important that a person knows that space is being held for them and they don't need to stop a process of healing. So this incomplete purging, if it does happen, which it can happen, is some reassurance. That sediment that was all stirred up, that had the opportunity of being purged in different ways in a psychedelic journey, will calm on its own. We see this if we throw a rock in a still pond. It's going to have ripple, and then it's going to be calm again. Same with the sediment. But healing is happening. Maybe it's in a way that you don't quite understand yet, or maybe that you're going to have a little bit of more ability of frustration tolerance, that your window of tolerance of stress might be gets wider. Maybe you have some more humor you tapped into. Something that psilocybin often shows us in different ways is we don't need to try so hard. We don't need to take everything so seriously. And so there is some nice gems of insights that get generated. But this incomplete purging is a real thing. I've seen it many times. I wanted to give some reassurance that don't be afraid of the purge during a psilocybin experience. It can be very beneficial. Purging comes in many ways. Like I said, it doesn't need to just be vomiting. It can be a sound, gesture, but do something. Do something to help move energy so it doesn't stay stuck, because it wants to move. And actually, for you to be led to a psychedelic journey, that means that you're ready to have this movement too. So I just wanted to end with a little earth song. These earth songs are something that came to me as a gift from psilocybin, and something I'll sing in the beginning as kind of part of a blessing before people consume. And some people actually like me to sing to them more during their experience. And I never know what these songs are, but this one is universally just putting out for anybody that is using psilocybin for healing, other plant medicines for healing. I'm by this very old growth cedar tree, so I'm going to just channel in some of that energy, and this is for you. Blessings to everybody on their journey. Again, this is Kathy Rosewell Jonas from Epic Healing Eugene and Radiant Heart Consulting, and wishing you all well.